So. Hello, fellow Earthlings. This is Earthling 6455463728. And social media can be a weapon of mass destruction. And that's what I'm going to get into on this edition of my show. Yeah, it's my show. So anyway, like most of you all will know, if you've been listening, I have a background in military reserves. I have an MBA, a bachelor's in computer science. I've done Sea Scouts. I've done karate. I've done gymnastics. I've done ballroom dancing, Latin dance, stuff like that. And that's me. So, social media can be a weapon of mass destruction. Many people would have heard about China's Great Firewall, where people, companies, entities are not easily, you're not allowed to access many things from China that you can outside of China. And beyond that, even movies. There's a limited number of movies that can be released in China every year. Foreign movies, that is. And all of that, this is something that Asia, China, Japan have had a history of doing, which is restricting information from the outside. So for example, with respect to Japan had a period where they were completely removed from the world. They did not allow foreigners to come in and just land and trade and mix ideas with people in Japan. And China had also cut off trade, I believe, with Japan at some point because Japan did not have a leader. So there was nobody to say, hey, why are your Japanese people doing X or Y or Z? So China just blocked out any trade with Japan for a period of time. And right now, as it is, China has restrictions on what Chinese people can see, as well as even in the social media that is accessible in China. The government, of course, goes through and censors different topics, different ideas, whatever. And for anybody who is a proponent of free speech, this kind of activity is really just anathema to their beliefs. I hope that I'm using anathema correctly. I'm trying to be like Dane Cook. He said that his father used to read the dictionary and he thought that his father was a weirdo. And then he realized that he said the F word so many times in a particular stand-up that he wanted to broaden his vocabulary, and he went ahead and he did that. But the idea is that people believe in free speech. The problem with free speech is that if you're like past President Trump and you have 89 million followers, and your every word, everything that you put out is just meant to create a fervor, and to get people riled up, to bend them to your will. Even if 0.01% of those people, 89 million people, decide to take you seriously in terms of the craziest of the thing that you don't even put out yourself, but you retweet, we are still talking thousands and thousands of people that can go ahead and do whatever crazy thing it is that you suggested or implied or whatever. Maybe you didn't imply anything, but they just got it in their heads that this is what you meant, and that not even 1% of them is thousands and thousands of people, if not 1% of 89 million is what? 800,000 people. And 0.1% of that is 80,000 people. 80,000 people is a small army. The thing about it is that undoubtedly freedom of speech is a great thing, especially given the history of the world. In many instances where people are killed or hurt because they couldn't say what they wanted to say. Again, as I was saying, when you can reach, we understand the power of ideas. The power of ideas is emblematic of entire countries. Entire countries have an ethos, a psyche based on a particular idea. For example, Americans you might say that freedom is that idea of America. If you can get an idea into a large number of people's heads, you wield tremendous power. And if you can do that all at once through social media, and not over years and years and years of this idea making its way through a country. For example, like women should be allowed to vote, or gay people have rights. Some of these things are things that, it's going to take time to change somebody's idea about certain things. But if you already are just basically grabbing the reins of what people already believe, and you are like a laser beam in terms of its light amplification through the stimulated emission of radiation. So the idea is that people already believe that. Everybody in this laser device, they function at a particular wavelength. So you go into the Republican Party, like a person like Trump, and you start agitating with their core beliefs. Hey, immigrants, back and forth. That pulse of energy is going back and forth, stimulating more and more people. And you just get them more and more agitated with their wavelength of energy. And then you just open the laser beam and you point it at an area, at a specific area, and say, go. That's what social media is like. Social media in the past, if you wanted to be able to access people, you had to go on a TV program. And that TV program was on a specific day, at a specific time. And you had to hope that that show had good ratings, that a lot of people were home, that there was no competition. You weren't competing for somebody else's attention from somebody else at that same time, because people had to be in front of the TV for you to get that idea to them. Or you could put something in a newspaper, and you had to know that there's a certain area that you might be tackling. But now, all of that is gone. All of that, where you would have to go, as they say, to the gatekeepers, and hope, keep your fingers crossed that a lot of people would see you at that time. The best you could have hoped for, the best that you can hope for in terms of traditional media, was the Super Bowl in America. A lot of Americans watch that, and even other people around the world. But as it is right now, with millions, if not billions of people on something like Facebook or something like Twitter, you can instantaneously reach millions and millions of people. Yeah, some of them might not open the app every single day. Some of them, maybe they just follow you for the sake. I don't really know how Twitter works exactly. And even with respect to Facebook, if you have a post, even if somebody follows you, unless you're paying for that thing, it's not going to get to all of the followers. So Twitter really, really, really is a lot more powerful than Facebook, if I'm understanding it correctly, how it works. And yet, the government of the US and many governments around the world don't seem to understand exactly what they're currently dealing with when it comes to a platform like Twitter, where after the fact, like after there is an uprising or something like that, governments in different countries, where there is an uprising, they will shut down the internet, might shut down social media, whatever the case is, after the fact. But they don't see people becoming radicalized. They don't see it happening. And, there is a lot of, in the US, for example, people will say, yeah, we have freedom of speech and we can say and do whatever we want and da-da-da. After 9/11, I remember that I believe the government of the US said to the news channels that they should stop showing the towers being attacked. And they did that. They did that because they knew how powerful that image was. And even though the stations could do whatever they wanted, they didn't. Mostly by and large, they just, nope, we're not going to show that. We're done showing that. So the American government understood that. Governments around the world understand that. But I don't think many of us really understand that if you amass, now the idea is that you can amass that number of people, and like Trump, you can say something that is, whatever we can construe the things that he said as being enough to violate Twitter's terms of service. The thing about it is that you can say a lot of stuff without it crossing the line, but you're still, and then one day you can just say, I'm going to blow up my account, get them now, and it's like a bomb. That 0.1% of people that you have following you, if it's millions and millions of people, and you have 8,000 or 80,000 people that you have radicalized to do X or Y or Z, what's the difference between that and chemical agent or a nuclear bomb? People can do pretty bad things. And China has 100% grasped that. I mean, as an authoritarian regime, China realizes that there are threats and that social media can be utilized to create and to crystallize those threats against itself, and is doing something about it. I think with respect to Trump, the quote-unquote attempted coup is an example of what Twitter, social media, Facebook allowed to happen. And in allowing that to happen, they also completely neutralized the threat by getting rid of President Trump's account. Definitely. I think it can't be ignored, the fact that we really have no idea what would have happened if Trump had been allowed to continue unfettered on social media, given what already had happened with respect. And yes, he had a, what do you call it? I think he had a rally beforehand, and he directed the people to come to the Capitol. But I still think that his, at times, hundreds of tweets and retweets it can't be that was nothing. It's not possible that all of his tweets with respect to birtherism, that all of his tweets with respect to Fauci and stealing of the election and mask wearing and all of these other things, yes, the news media completely and utterly gives him a platform, 100%. And they have direct access to all of those ideas from his tweets. How many stories came from his tweets? And right now, that's silent, it's gone, it's almost every last bit of power that Trump would have had. He's almost like Alex Jones at this point. Alex Jones went from being everywhere, being on Twitter, being on YouTube, being on, I think, Facebook as well. He went from being everywhere, being in the news all the time, to being nothing. And that feels like where Trump is right now. If he was still on Twitter, he would still have a significant amount of power, I think, and be a significant threat even now. So, I don't know. This is not the most cohesive piece that I've done, but it feels like it's just so much to this thing that, anyway, that's it for me. So feel free to like, dislike, comment, subscribe, hate, mitigate, all those things that you would like someone to do to a piece that was yours. Have a good one. Peace.